I think we've seen in Vancouver, you're always going to have the core base of diehard fans that are loyal and stick by this team no matter what. Though those guys are the real MVPs, the true champs. But the way the city can come together when there's something to be excited about, like when we had the 2011 team, obviously when we had the Olympics and Team Canada, there's a special buzz. There's something you can't put your finger on it, but the atmosphere of the whole city just changes, and the amount of Canucks gear that you see, it just becomes entirely a Canucks market. And it's something that I've only ever seen before in the States, where
Yeah.
when I was on the Canucks' first road trip out in Philly, I was like, holy crap, the Phillies are in the playoffs. And that day, I'm not exaggerating or lying or stretching the truth here. I'd wager at least 60% of the average people walking on the street had some type of Phillies gear, whether it was hat, a t-shirt, jersey. It was electrifying. And that's the sort of, I mean, maybe not to that extent, but the Canucks got close to that type of atmosphere in 2011 with the whole city behind them. It didn't really matter if you were a hockey fan or not. You knew something about the team. You had some level of investment in what was going on. You knew who the main core pieces were: Burrows, Luongo. There were so many fan favorites to keep up with. And I've mentioned this before, but now the average person, unless you keep up with hockey, no one really, like, if I bring up the Canucks to an average, to a casual person who isn't necessarily a diehard hockey fan, the first thing that they think of are the Sedins, Luongo, Burrows, and Kessler.
Yep.
Bieksa, like that core. They're still invested in that core, and I think that speaks to how when we do have an elite team in this market, which we're desperately dying for, it can do something special. And I think that's what hurts, is we're still so far away from that.
Well, and it's something for people to grab onto, right? And you mentioned the casual fans. Like last year, you could say that like Bruce Boudreau was the thing they were able to grab onto, because like, hey, the team scores a bunch of goals. What are we all going to do? We're going to say
I thought
Bruce.
the bubble was better, even. Like, I think, I don't quite think that the Bruce run worked for Canucks fans. It got everyone on board for that, and everyone was united. I don't think it quite captured, like, the barometer I always use is my circle of friends. My circle of friends outside of the ones that are diehard hockey fans, who, I mean, they're not really sports fans, but for when there's something really interesting, like this, like my best friend ended up watching the Battle of Alberta in the playoffs. I'm like, dude, you never watch hockey, but it was like interesting enough that he was on board. He didn't really know anything about what was going on with Bruce Boudreau or whatever, but the casual fan, I think, bought into when this team was in the bubble playoff in August and winning at that time. That's, I think, when people were like back watching playoff games. You saw Scott Road absolutely bumping, and that wasn't even in at a time where the Canucks could host playoff games, right? Like, that was in Edmonton. So I think it's going to take actually getting back into the playoffs to recapture that magic.